Hi, welcome to the Itihas channel. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Nagendraya Namaha, Om Amme Narayana, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Anjanaya Namaha, Om Guruve Namaha. Last episode we spoke about the birth of Devavrata, of how he went with his mother Ganga to Devaloka, got trained by all the greatest rishis, got all the astras, and came back to Bhuloka. And Ganga handed him over to Shantanu, and Shantanu brought him back to Hastinapur. There was rejoicing all over Hastinapur that the crown prince of Hastinapur had come back. A brilliant man, Devavrata, extremely brave, handsome, just, a great ruler. Immediately understanding the capacity that Devavrata had, Shantanu anointed him the crown prince or Yuvaraja, and then went back to doing what he loved best, hunting. Devavrata took care of the kingdom of Hastinapur in the absence of Shantanu. Devavrata would go for wars where kings would revolt against the Hastinapur kingdom and quell them. He was an invincible warrior. He was without compare. There was no one in the entire Bharatvarsha who could stand up to Devavrata. And the greatest times of the Kuru dynasty were back in full swing. Shantanu, on the other hand, would spend his time hunting and doing what he loved best. He would spend time in the evenings with his son Devavrata, and they would talk for long hours before falling asleep. He would hear about stories that Devavrata had experienced in Devaloka. He would tell his stories of his life and his hunts in Bhuloka, in and around the kingdom of Hastinapur. They would talk about the daily problems that Devavrata would encounter in the court, and Shantanu would give his advice and his suggestions. When Devavrata would have problems in certain aspects of dharma, he would come and talk to Shantanu, and Shantanu would give his advice. And they had an extremely close bond. There wasn't a single day that Shantanu didn't spend talking to his son Devavrata. It could be anything trivial, it could be business, it could be important relations, it could be related to security, and over a whole host of topics. They were the ideal father and son. And so 4 years passed, and Shantanu one day went on a hunt as usual. This time he went towards the Yamuna. As he was hunting along the banks of the Yamuna, suddenly a whiff of a beautiful scent caught his nose. It was a scent that was unworldly. It was a scent that was a mixture of flowers which were not of this earth. And he couldn't believe that such a scent could exist. And he followed that scent and came to a clearing in the Yamuna, where a dainty dark woman was sitting at the banks of the Yamuna with her legs dangling and her feet playing in the water, her long black hair loose behind her. And he was mesmerized. And Shantanu fell in love again. He fell in love only twice in his life, and both those times changed history. What was that love that Shantanu had fallen into? That every time, and only twice he did fall in love, the entire history of Bharatvarsha changed forever. He went to this woman and asked, "Who are you?" She said, "My name is Yojna or Satyavati. I am the daughter of the local fisherman here. He is the chief of the fishermen here. His name is Dasaraja. I am his daughter. And he looked at her and said, "My God, you're as beautiful as you smell wonderful." He touched her cheeks, and she looked at him and bit her lips and smiled. And he knew that he had to have her as his wife. And as he does always, or rather as he did the last time, he asked her, "Will you marry me?" And she said, "I would. I know you. You are Shantanu, the great king of Hastinapur. It would be my pleasure to marry you, O king. But my father here, he's Desharaja. He's the chief of this fishing village. I'm his daughter. You need to ask him before you ask for me for my hand in marriage. If he gives his permission, I'd willingly come with you." And so Shantanu wasted no time and said, "Take me to your father." And immediately they rushed to that small, humble dwelling of Desharaja, that chieftain of that fishing village. When they walked into the hut, Desharaja was busy in his meal. He was eating his fish and rice and carefully peeling that fish off the bones, as was mentioned in the Mahabharata. He looked up at Shantanu, recognized him, but did not get up. For this smart fisherman was extremely intelligent. He knew that his daughter was born for greatness. He knew that his daughter was destined to be a queen. And he was expecting that one day the king of Hastinapur will walk through these walls. And he knew that one day that great king will come and ask him for his daughter's hand in marriage. And he knew that one day that king should be made to beg for his daughter's hand in marriage. And his daughter should not be given so easily. How did this Desharaj know all these things? And we go back a little more to another story a little while back. So it was many, many years before that there was a great king in that region called Uparichara. Now, Uparichara was also an extremely brave king, and he was the king of Chedi. Chedi was a place in somewhere near UP, I think. This great king of Chedi was a very brave king, a very handsome king, and he had a beautiful wife called Girika. Now, Girika already had 5 children with Uparichara, but she was in her fertile time at that time, and she came to him looking absolutely gorgeous in a very seductive gown, and told Uparichara, "My great king, I want to have a child with you, another child, for I feel this child will be a brave child and a child of destiny. Come." But Uparichara was on his way to a hunt, and he told his wife Girika, "I don't have the time, I have to go, for I have to hunt down 2 red stags, whose fat should be used in a homa to be done by the rishis in the forest." And in those days, rishis used to use the fat of a stag or a deer in their offering their oblations and in their homas. So he told Girika, "I have to go to the forest urgently to hunt down the deer, and I won't be able to spend time with you, my dear." And he went off. And he went into the forest to hunt. And it was only when he missed 2 beautiful red stags that he realized that his conversation was not in the hunt. His conversation was back at home with his wife Girika. And that vision of her coming to him kept coming at him every now and then, and he just couldn't concentrate on the hunt. And towards evening, when the entire team went down to rest, he went into a banyan grove. And then, thinking of Girika, he relieved himself on the leaf of a banyan tree. On a huge leaf he relieved himself. He said a mantra into that leaf with his seed in it, called his hunting falcon down, and the hunting falcon came down, and he sent the leaf with his seed in it, tied it up, and sent it to the falcon. The falcon took it in its beak and started flying towards Chedi, towards the kingdom of Chedi, where his wife Girika would be waiting. As the falcon flew towards the kingdom of Chedi, a fishing eagle somewhere on a tree saw this falcon with something perched on his beak. Thinking it's a fish, it attacked the falcon. And the falcon and the eagle had a wild war in the sky. And that banyan leaf with the king's seed fell down into the water. There in the water, there was a fish who used to be an apsara known as Adrika. This apsara was an apsara in Devaloka, and she would often come down to Bhuloka to swim in the beautiful crystal rivers and streams of Bhuloka. On one such day when she was swimming in the river, wearing not more than her bathing suit, birthday suit. Sorry, not the bathing suit, it was a birthday suit. So wearing not more than her birthday suit, this beautiful apsara saw a great rishi on the banks of this river who was deep in penance. And seeing that brilliant face and that knowledgeable look, she was immediately attracted to that rishi. And Adrika wanted that rishi immediately. So she started playing with his ankle and pulling him over to the water, knowing fully well that once the rishi opens his eyes and see her the way she was, he would lose control and they could have a tender moment together. But she was mistaken. That rishi opened his eyes, looked at her, and in anger cursed her. You woman who is in the water like a fish, you go be a fish. And suddenly Adrika realized she started developing golden scales and a fin. And within no time she became a fish. And she started swimming in that river. And Adrika, the beautiful apsara, was now a fish in Bhuloka. And she kept swimming all over the river. And over time she forgot she was the apsara. And around this time, when that falcon was taking the seed of Uparichara back to Chedi, and that banyan leaf filled with the seed fell down from the falcon's mouth into the river, she saw that something floating in the river, and she went towards it. And when she nibbled it, the seed came free, and she swallowed it. Over time, she realized she started becoming heavier and heavier, and something was growing inside her. And over time, in the next 10 months, she became so big and heavy that she couldn't move, and she was just laying at the bed of the river. Around that time, the same fisherman, Desaraja, cast a net into the riverbed, and when he pulled, he saw a huge golden fish with a belly filled with something. And in his excitement, he took this fish home and slit the belly open. When he slit the belly open, he saw 2 young children in the belly, a boy and a girl. And as he slit the belly open of this fish, there was a sudden flash, and the spirit of this nymph got released from the fish, and the spirit went into Devaloka, and Adrika was free. And suddenly this Desharaja saw in the stomach of this fish 2 children. He himself was childless, and he wanted to keep the children. But he knew true power lay in pleasing the king. So he took these 2 children with the fish, the body of the fish, to the kingdom of Chedi, which was the ruling kingdom of that area, and went to this king, Uparichara. and told the king this wonderful story of this fish he had caught with these two children in them. Now, Uparichara had come back from the hunt long back, a year ago, and when he came home, he asked his wife Girika, "Did you get my gift?" And she said, "No." And when he saw his wounded falcon, he knew the falcon had a fight with some other bird, and he knew that seed was lost into the river. And his wife Girika was angry that she didn't receive the seed. And that story came back to him when he saw this fish and he knew what had happened. And this great king Uparichara told the fisherman, "Show me those two children." And when the fisherman took out the two children, he noted that the boy was a very handsome, beautiful looking boy. The girl also extremely beautiful and dark. But she had a fish odor about her. She smelled strongly of fish. The king wanted to keep both these children because he knew both these children are his. But the stench of the fish on that girl child was so strong that he told the fisherman, "You keep this girl, I'll keep the boy." Over time, Uparichara became a great king. He pleased the Vasus so much that the Vasus gifted him a Vimana. And Uparichara would roam around in this Vimana all over Chedi, and he used to be called Uparichara Vasu. That child which he had, which was gifted to him by Desharaja, grew up and he called him Matsyaraja because he was a king that came out of the fish. Matsyaraja then grew up to a handsome young man who ruled over the kingdom of Chedi very efficiently and became a huge Maharatha himself. In the meantime, Desharaja took this girl home. She grew up to be an extremely beautiful and dark woman. I say beautiful and dark, not beautiful but dark. For in those days, there was no obsession with fairness. And some of the most beautiful women of the land used to be dark. The great Draupadi, this extreme beauty, was also called Krishna because she was dark. And in fact, in those days, women who were fair would consider themselves inferior to these beautiful dark women. And so, this child grew up, who he named Kali because she was dark, but to also be named Matsyagandhi because she emanated a foul fish-like odor. Though she was extremely beautiful, that fish-like odor pervaded everywhere around her, and which is why people used to call her Matsyagandhi. He himself called her Matsyagandhi, and the name stuck to her. One day, when Matsyagandhi was around 16 years old, the great Parashara came down to the banks of the Yamuna. And seeing Desharaja standing there eating his food, he told him, "Quickly, finish your food fast. I need to get to the other side." Somehow in the Mahabharata, Desharaja comes into the picture 3 times. And all 3 times he's eating. So Desharaja was sitting there eating his rice and fish. And Parashara comes in a hurry and says, "Quick, man, I need to get to the other side of the Yamuna. Take me there." And Desharaja sees the Rishi and says, "Yes, I'm eating right now. I shall ask my daughter to take you." And Desharaja calls out to Matsyagandhi and tells her, "Matsyagandhi, take the great Rishi Parashara to the other side." And Matsyagandha walks in front of the Rishi and takes him along. And that earthy smell of fish got into the Rishi. This is a Rishi who used to go between Devaloka and Bhuloka, who has had the adulation of all the greatest apsaras in Devaloka. But he was not wavered by any one of them. He did not lose his control to any of the most beautiful and the most fragrant apsaras in Devaloka. But when this fish like odor hit him, he didn't know what happened. He was crazy for her. There is something to be told about pheromones. They can make you go wild. And he knew that he had to have her. They got into the boat and he looked at her and smiled and said, "You are the most beautiful being ever that I have seen." And Matsyagandhi looked at him and smiled. For she remembered in the days when she was a child, her father Desharaja had got an astrologer to look into her future. For who would marry a woman who smells of fish? And the astrologer had predicted that this is no ordinary woman. She would be a great woman. She would be a great queen. She was destined for greatness. And when Parashara looked at her, she remembered this prophecy and thought, maybe the time has come when my greatness shall come forth. And she smiled back at him in the most tantalizing way. And she had her hand on the oar, and Parashar held her hand, and she didn't pull it away. And she smiled back at him and said, "No, great Rishi, my father's on the bank of the Yamuna river. He's watching." Her father himself probably purposely asked his daughter to take Parashara because he knew the great Rishi Parashara was. And he knew, and he too thought about that prophecy when the great Parashara came and thought destiny is walking into their house. And that is probably why he asked Matsyagandhi to take Parashara across the river. And Matsyagandhi said, "My father's watching." And yes, when they looked back at shore, Desharaja was intently looking at what was happening on the boat. Well, if he did care so much, he wouldn't have sent his daughter with him, right? Anyway. And then Parashara said, "Don't worry, we shall be covered." And saying some mantra with a mudra in his hand, suddenly there was a huge, dense fog that enveloped the boat. Desharaja couldn't see what was happening in the boat. And shouting, "Matsyagandhi, is everything okay? Oh, Kali, is everything okay?" And Kali shouted back, "Yes, father, everything is fine, don't worry." And then Parashara looked at Matsyagandhi and said, "Are you happy now? Everything looks fine now." And she says, "Yes, but it's not dark yet. And they say you shouldn't do anything when it's not dark. Tender moments should be had only when it's dark." And then the great Parashara started calling out another mantra and started becoming dark. Dark clouds started forming and the entire boat was surrounded in darkness and it started to snow. And Desharaja at the banks could see that there were clouds forming over the Yamuna and there was a very unnatural snowfall there, and knew that history was taking shape there. And then Matsyagandhi looked at him and said, "Great Rishi, you will have me and you will go away, and I will get pregnant with a child. And then what face will I show to my father and this little village here, who will mock me and make fun of me, and I will never hear the end of it." But by now Parashar couldn't be controlled. He was willing to gift any boon that she would ask. And he said, "Yes, my lady, come to me. Whatever boon you wish, I will give you. You will have a child who will be the greatest and most knowledgeable ever to be born on this earth. You will have a child whose name will be known for all time. And once we are through, you will have your virginity back." And then Matsyagandhi said, "But I have this horrible pervading smell. What of it?" And he says, "I like this smell, But she said, I don't. And he said, okay, I shall give you another boon. This smell shall disappear from your body, and a smell of all the flowers of Devaloka mixed shall emanate from your body. You shall no longer be called Matsyagandhi. You shall be called Yojnavati, for this beautiful smell that shall then come out of your body shall flow out for a yojna around you. And you shall change and become more beautiful. And suddenly her smell changed. She was no longer Matsyagandhi. Instantly, there's a train in South India called Matsyagandha Express. And he told her, you shall no longer be Matsyagandhi. And in that instant, her smell changed from that fish odor to the most beautiful heavenly smells, scents. A scent that could come directly from heaven, from the most beautiful flowers in heaven. And that smell started pervading all around here for over a yojna. And in that instant, she underwent these pubertal changes where her body matured, minor changes started coming in, her jawline became better, her limbs started becoming smoother, and her body became better. And then the sage Parashar looked at her and she looked back at him, and it is described in the Mahabharata. She looked at him with eyes as wide as saucers and widely placed eyes, with a bosom like lotuses pushing through a green blouse, and her slender hips like the stalk of a lotus. And one can only imagine that a lotus flower would never look the same ever again. And then they stopped at a dvipa, or a small island on the middle of the Yamuna, and got down from the rocking boat into the island. And the great Parashar drank of her youth while she drank from his experience. And the next morning, he kissed her on her forehead and walked over the river and walked over the Yamuna river and went his way. Which makes you think, if he could walk over the river, why did he need the boat in the first place? Well, that was for history to be made, for destiny to be written. And there, in that same island, Satyavati, as now she was called, because her beauty and smell was so beautiful that it was like truth itself. And in that island, Satyavati, or Yojnavati as she was now to be called, gave birth to a child overnight. And the child that was born, it was said, looked as handsome as Kamadeva himself. He was dark as the night. And because he was dark as the night, he was called Krishna. And because he was born in that dvipa or island, he was called Krishna Dvaipayana, who would later be known as Vyasa, the man who compiled the Vedas and Vedangas, and the man who dictated the Mahabharata to Ganesha. This beautiful, Kama-like child grew up in an instant, grew up quickly, for time stood still as he grew up. We don't know whether the years passed and time around them stood still, or he grew up instantly, but it was said that time stood still all over while Krishna Dvaipayana grew up. And growing up, he bowed down to his mother, touched her feet, Satyavati's feet, and told her, mother, I am going to go and learn the knowledge of the world, for I have to leave you. But any time in the future, if you ever need me, any time, you just need to think of me and I will present myself in front of you. So saying, this great Rishi, Krishna Dvaipayana, walked away and went into the Himalayas to offer penance and to do sadhana and to become one of the greatest rishis ever to roam the earth. Satyavati, as she would now be called henceforth, got into the boat and rowed to the shore. for her father, just a couple of hours had gone by. He didn't ask her anything, for he knew destiny was in play. And they went back to their village. And then, much later, to that same spot came Shantanu, drawn by that beautiful smell which spread over a yojna, the smell of unworldly flowers, and came and into her father's house to ask for her hand in marriage. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Nagendraya Namaha, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Anjaneyaya Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Gurave Namaha.